Swimming Against the Historical Current is my title. I want to talk to you about my personal journey to find my research topic. As a graduate student, that's something that was rather difficult, and I found that my colleagues had that same process. I want to explain to you guys why I am the little red fish in this picture. To find my topic, I had to move against the currents, and that's often a difficult and defining chapter that we have to, a jump that we have to make as researchers often. This is me on one of the best days of my life when I graduated from Southern Utah University with a bachelor's degree in history. To do this, I needed to complete a 25-page senior capstone paper. And in my research, I found I was drawn to the American presidents, presidential scandals in particular. This is the finished product titled Presidential Scandals that look at the Teapot Dome, Monica Lewinsky, and Watergate affairs. I loved studying this. I loved finding out that the presidents were just men who had royally screwed up. And when I started my graduate career this last August, we were talking with our colleagues about our research, and they all wanted to study the American West. And I did not. And that scared me a little because I was the only one that wanted to look at the presidents. I wanted to look at John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. I was interested in the era of the 1960s and 70s and the dynamism that happened during those decades. I was interested in television as a political tool for both of these men. As I studied, I came across what is known as the great man theory. This is a 19th century belief that the great men are the ones who tell history. If you've heard the saying that the victors are the ones who write history, this comes from the same concept. The great men in American history are the presidents. The presidents are the ones that we typically think of when we think of US politicians. As time went on into the 20th century, people began to focus less on the presidents and more on the people. I kind of freaked out when I realized that I wanted to study the great men, so I researched a lot. I cried a lot, and I questioned myself, was this what I really wanted to do? What I found personally is that taking the presidents at face value was not an avenue that I needed to pursue. Instead, a new spin was needed. Something that I needed to look at was Kennedy and Nixon, but not just as presidents, but as men. Think about it. When you think of Kennedy, you automatically associate him with the assassination on November 22nd, 1963. You think of him as a war hero, but do you think of him as a Pulitzer Prize-winning author? Do we realize that he was an author before he became president? But same with Nixon. We associate him, understandably, with the Watergate scandal. That's one of the biggest scandals in American history. But do we realize that he was vice president under Eisenhower? Or do we recognize that he had these small details gave me something that I could use, that I could grasp onto? Where I found my niche was to combine them, to look at their relationship. They entered the Congress in the same year, and their offices were across the hall from one another. They faced off in the 1960 presidential election. So what does this mean for your guys' research? You probably have zoned out during this history lesson, and that's okay. But ultimately, I want to leave this with you, that independent scholars are made, they are not born. Going back to my red fish analogy, there will be a time when you are called to move against the current or to flow with it, and ultimately sticking to your guns, and despite the mainstream, will pay off, not just in research, but in life. Thank you.